Come on out. I'm not afraid of you. Come on. Come on out. I'll float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Nobody out in the forest meaner than me. Come on, elephants, tigers, and gorillas. I'll whip 100 Godzillas.
Hey guys, welcome to CraterMania. I'm your host, the man they call Crater, and I'd like to welcome you guys back to day 2 of Godzilla Fest here in my 500 Movies in 2025 series. And for this episode, this will be movies number 135 through 139. So we're almost to that 150 movies that I've watched this year alone, mark, guys. And I've talked about this a few times here on the channel, but I'm just so happy that I started doing this, that I set this goal for myself at the beginning of the year to try to watch 500 movies in 1 year, because it's something I've always wanted to do, and I didn't think it was ever possible. But I'm getting through this pretty easily, to be honest with you, and I'm just enjoying the hell out of it. Just talking about these movies, each one with you guys here on YouTube, and especially a lot of movies that I have seen before in the past, and movies that I've just grown up loving. Especially these these films, man. I mean, like, I love the Godzilla franchise, and just last night for day 1 of Godzilla Fest, talking about those first 5 movies in the franchise, I had an absolute great time talking about those with you guys. And in the midst of talking about them, I was, having all these memories, come back to me from when I was a kid, watching these movies with my dad, my brother, or my friends, whoever, because this is something that I absolutely loved as a kid, and I wanted to just share that with everybody. And, that brings me back full circle by me talking about these films here with you guys, some of you that I may not even know. It's just it's really surreal to me, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and I'm glad to be back here again for day 2 of Godzilla Fest to talk about 5 more movies tonight from the Godzilla franchise, guys. And hope you liked that little clip that I added in at the opening there from Sanford and Son. Just that popped in my head earlier. I was like, I wonder if I can find that clip, and lo and behold, I did find it. So I'm a big Sanford and Son fan. My wife, our whole family basically is a huge fan of that show. So glad to tie that in, a little bit with the whole Godzilla theme we got going this week. But again, like I said, I got 5 more movies I want to talk about tonight, and I'll start here in just a moment. And I got a few more things I'm going to be showing, like from my Godzilla collection, and that'll be at the end of this stream. So I want to get to the movies first, and then I'll show that stuff off and talk about that. Just one other thing I just wanted to mention before I get started is that, I know some people like to come in and talk on the chat and stuff. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to handle it a little bit different just so it doesn't kind of get me off track of when I'm talking about the movie. So you guys definitely, I will acknowledge you, in between the movies. So you guys just go ahead, if you're in the chat, if you want to talk in the chat, just, go ahead and talk amongst yourselves in the chat, and I'll get to your questions and comments and all that here in just a little bit. So give me just a second here. All right, sorry, my thing was freezing up for just a second, but I think we're good now. But I guess let's go ahead and get started with this first movie that I'm going to be talking about tonight. So it kind of serves as a follow-up to the last movie I talked about last night on the stream, which was Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. So this kind of follows that story back up, from how that movie ended. So this is, this is one that really truly embodies that kind of sheer, adulterated fun, much like the rest of these films that I've talked about, of that whole Showa era. And this is Invasion of Astro-Monster from 1965. Um, Now, in my opinion, if you're even remotely a Godzilla fan and you haven't seen this one, you guys need to stop what you're doing. If you're watching this video, you've never seen the movie, you need to go and like watch that movie right now because you're really missing out on this pure, just this pure dose of monster mayhem, and it's just really it's a lot of sci-fi silliness and just that classic Toho charm that we all adore, about these Godzilla franchise films and just everything that company puts out. So what exactly is Invasion of Astro Monster? Well, it's the sixth film in the Godzilla franchise, and it's just this perfect blend of like science fiction and monster movie madness, and like I said, there's a lot of like silliness, blended in there as well, and just kind of think that like space exploration meets giant monster wrestling. That's best way I can describe this one. It's kind of it's also this kind of healthy, like thing of like the whole Cold War era paranoia that was kind of thrown in, there for good measure. Um, and it's a global adventure pretty much that kind of takes us to this mysterious planet X. And it's an absolute blast from start to finish, guys. Um, so again, we talked about him a lot last night on the stream. Ashiro Honda is back again, for this spectacular film, and he really understood the heart of these films, and he directs Invasion of Astro Monster just with this kind of playful energy, and kind of embraces that absurdity of just the whole story, and just he really created this film that is both exciting and just incredibly entertaining. Um, so the film opens with these two astronauts, Glenn and Fuji. And Glenn here is played by an American actor named Nick Adams. So this is a very different kind of shift in things that they were doing with these Godzilla films. So they were starting to include these American actors in them as well. Um, and like I said, these two astronauts, they are sent to investigate this newly discovered planet named Planet X, and it's located just behind Jupiter. So when they land on the planet, they are greeted by these aliens, uh, who remarkably look like human beings, and but they got these like futuristic jumpsuits on and stuff, and they're led by this female character, they call the controller. Um, and I forget the actress's name that plays her, but she does a wonderful job. Just and it's very her performance and is very like eerie. I mean, but it's so good. But anyway, the aliens, they seem kind of technologically advanced, and they claim to be suffering from all these attacks on their planet by this monstrous creature that they call Monster Zero, because all of the like creatures that they encounter, they give them numbers. So in this case, they have given this one name, they named it Monster Zero. But interestingly enough, Monster Zero turns out to be none other than King Ghidorah. So to make matters, even more worse, Rodan is also on Planet X, and he ends up battling Ghidorah. So, the aliens, they seem kind of desperate in this situation, and they plead with Earth and the humans to lend them Godzilla to come there to kind of help defeat Ghidorah. And in return, they promise this like miracle cure for all earthly diseases like cancer and all that. It's very, very weird take, but uh yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting, and it's what make this even more interesting is when I watched this the other night, and and knowing the story behind this because of the aliens promising this kind of miracle cure for all these diseases on Earth. Um, and I don't think you would mind me mentioning this on the stream, but a really good friend of mine, Jeremy, and I'll leave his last name. So my good friend Jeremy, he just got news the very next day after I watched this movie again, uh, that he is now in remission from his cancer, and that is wonderful news, uh, because he had definitely been in my prayers for a long time ever since he told me about that he was going through that. So just very, like I said, it's a very weird take and very kind of ironic, that I watched this movie and it talks about that in the movie, and then the next day my friend goes into remission. So um, just really, really awesome. But anyway, like I said, these aliens, they in return, they would promise this miracle cure for all these diseases on Earth, and Earth is represented by uh, this Commander Glenn, and the and it's also this doctor that's with them. It's Doctor Sakurai, I think is his name. So they kind of hesitantly, agree with these aliens to make this deal. Um, so Godzilla and Rodan, they're there on Planet X in these capsules, and it's a very goofy, but yet iconic to me, a very goofy visual. Uh, and they're just unleashed out of these capsules to fight King Ghidorah, and then this results in this kind of three-way dance between these. Well, not really a three-way. It's more of a handicap match, basically, if you're talking in wrestling terms, 2-on-1 type situation, and and it's just the whole battle they have is pure gold. I mean, we get to see Godzilla and Rodan, who are usually rivals. They team up here against this kind of greater threat of King Ghidorah, and the special effects. I mean, yeah, they're dated nowadays by a lot of people, but to me, they're iconic. They're something that made me fall in love with these movies. Um, but they're very charming, I think, and just that kind of gives that energy and that vibe of that time. You know what I mean? Um, and the monster suits here are fantastic, and just the little miniature sets and on Planet X, they look so cool. I love them. But however, anyway, things end up taking this kind of really bad turn when Glenn and Fuji return to Earth with this promised cure. Um, and it's quickly revealed that these aliens haven't come to help Earth, um, but to conquer it, pretty much. So this cure um, is actually just this mind control technology, and the aliens have been using Godzilla and Rodan, who are now under their control, and they've dubbed them Monster 01 and Monster 02. Um, so to kind of enforce their demands with these monsters, and their plan is to take over Earth and just and use it as this kind of new colony for their people of their planet. Um, so Earth is plunged into this chaos with as Godzilla and Rodan, they're now these kind of mind controlled puppets. Um, they're just rampaging across Japan, and they're following these aliens' orders. But the humans, which are they're never one to back down in these Godzilla films. They start fighting back. So there's this engineer named Tetsuo, who's connected to the initial like Planet X mission, and he's also Glenn's girlfriend. So she plays this kind of crucial role, in the film, and she has these coworkers who are also inventors, and they're led by this guy, Mr. Namakawa, I think is his name, and um, he realizes that these aliens are kind of vulnerable to a very specific high frequency sound. So they work together to kind of develop this jamming device to break the aliens' mind control. Um, and just wanted to pause for just a second, guys, and just say, like, some of these human characters' names in the Godzilla franchise, it's sometimes I'm not the best at remembering them because just sometimes I have a hard time even pronouncing their names. But I just will say that um, I fell in love with these movies not for the human characters, but for these monsters and these monster battles and stuff. So if I'm being real with you guys, that is the real reason why I love these Godzilla movies is because of the monsters. And I think that goes for a lot of Godzilla fans. Is that's the reason why they fell in love with these movies is because of the monsters and not the human characters. But not saying that the human characters are bad or anything, because and some of them do have really interesting stories. But to me, just the most interesting part about these movies is the monsters. Um, but anyway, back to the story. So um, towards the end of this film, the jamming device is activated finally, and it frees Godzilla and Rodan from the aliens' control. Now, now they're pissed off that they've been manipulated by these aliens. So Godzilla and Rodan they kind of turn their rage towards the aliens, while Ghidorah, who is still on Planet X, apparently they only borrowed Godzilla and Rodan. Uh, so Ghidorah is suffered from this jamming signal as well, um, and this the this iconic final battle takes place on Earth when King Ghidorah arrives back on Earth. With Godzilla and Rodan again tag teaming against Ghidorah, and this time they're 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 there to defend humanity. So these three monsters, they just kind of unleash all their different signature attacks. And it's a very awesome showdown. I love it. But ultimately, Godzilla and Rodan do save the day here, and they send King Ghidorah fleeing back into space wherever, at least for now. Um, and the alien invasion, is stopped. So the film ends with Godzilla and Rodan also returning to their kind of respective territories on Earth, and they, leaving humanity just kind of have that collective sigh of relief, and just really appreciate this bizarre adventure they just endured. Um, now, let's go ahead and talk about the I guess the legacy and the impact that this movie has had. Um, I think that this film is a cornerstone of the Showa era. Um, and I think for a good reason, because it really solidified many tropes about that would become hallmarks of the later Godzilla films, and particularly the whole that increasing focus on like the intergalactic threats and just that whole monster tag team dynamic, which we'd already seen that before, in in Ghidorah, three-headed monster, and we'll see more of that, in other films that we'll talk about as well. But I think this is one of the first ones, definitely in the franchise, that kind of focused on that whole monster tag team thing. So, and the aliens in this film, they're to me they're iconic. Just like I said, the Godzilla and all the monsters are the most iconic thing about these films, and and I said the humans, they do play an important part as well, uh, but anything that's kind of out in the ordinary about these films, I think is super interesting. Like, uh, and again, I'm not discrediting the human characters because they do have, interesting characters throughout the series, and but just the monsters, the aliens, everything out of the ordinary here. Uh, they're the things that really make these movies super fun. Um, and the aliens in this film, they have this kind of minimalist, like, really futuristic aesthetic of these like monotone voices, and just they're almost kind of like very polite, but yet they have this kind of sinister, demeanor to them. And I think it's there. This is one of the most memorable like alien races that exist in the Godzilla universe, and they've also reappeared, in various forms throughout the franchise, and I think they're very popular villains with a lot of Godzilla fans to this day. Um, but perhaps I think the most enduring and hilarious element from this film is when Godzilla does this kind of like pose and dance where he comes up and like jumps up in the air and all that, and he's kind of, it's almost like he's standing on his tail. So this happens like during these moments where in the aliens' control, where Godzilla and Rodan, they break into these kind of strange, almost like Charlie Chaplin esque movements or something. If anybody's familiar with Charlie Chaplin. Um, and it's just very, very weird, but also very wonderful. Uh, you know, I don't know if they were intentionally being trying to be funny with that, or if that was just very unintentional. I think I like to think that it was unintentionally funny, and that makes me like enjoy it so much more. But it's very iconic to me as well. With the with with those moments. Um, It's just, it's kind of a testament to the film's, like, willingness to embrace that absurd and just have fun, and just, even amidst all these, like, monster battles. I mean, I think that's what I really enjoy most about films, and filmmakers who are kinda, dare to take that, go the distance, and just have fun with making a movie, and just, um, implementing that kind of silliness into the story. Um, that's what I find entertaining, though. I mean, not everybody, is as late is down to earth as me when it comes when it comes to films, and just kind of relaxed about it. I'm not one to take stuff too seriously with films, guys. I mean, it's just I'm here to be entertained, and even if that's a bunch of silly shit with these giant monsters dancing around and doing weird poses, that's really all it takes to to entertain me. But but that whole pose that like Godzilla does in this, it's also become this kind of beloved meme amongst Godzilla fans. And I think just this whole film alone is just kind of proved that it's had this lasting, cultural footprint on the franchise. But beyond all the silliness and the fun and the memes and any of that shit, Invasion of Astro Monster is genuinely, I think, it's exciting and a very well paced film. Um, it balances that kind of human drama with the monster action very effectively, and just that whole shift from the space exploration to alien invasion, really keeps the story fresh and just engaging, and it's a film that I think perfectly captures that spirit of the 1960s and the sci-fi B movies that were coming out during that time. But it's just got this added bonus of these giant monsters, and Invasion of Astro Monster is a great. It's a great Godzilla movie. It's wildly entertaining. I think it kind of, again, perfectly embodies that fun and imaginative, just that unique charm that the Showa era would exhibit. Um, just from these very cheesy aliens to the monster battles on on Planet X, and of course Godzilla's kind of unforgettable pose and dance, whatever you want to call that. It's just, I think this is a really a must see for any Godzilla fan, and just it's another fantastic entry point for anyone that's curious about these movies and never seen any of the Godzilla movies. So I think this was, what I would what I would do though if I was new to the Godzilla film series and that hadn't watched it, I would definitely start from the beginning, guys. But a lot of these Godzilla movies, the cool thing about them is that while they're kind of tied together, they're also not. So, uh, if you wanted to kind of like watch one that was really fun, really entertaining, this is definitely one that you could watch, and then like it kind of gets you interested in the franchise, and then you can maybe start from the beginning and kind of see how it led up to all that. But but yeah, guys, I mean this is a film that I can and I do, happily revisit from time to time again. But so yeah, definitely go watch this movie. And get ready to like pose and dance with Godzilla. You won't regret it, I promise you. Um, but I guess nobody's really talking in the chat right now. That's cool. That's cool. That just gives me the opportunity just to move right along here and talk about the next movie. And so this next movie, this one is an interesting one. And I think this one gets overlooked a lot in the Godzilla franchise. Um, but I don't think it should. I mean, I don't think this should be overlooked at all. Um, and this is Ebirah, Horror of the Deep from 1966. And it's also known as Godzilla versus the Sea Monster in the U.S. And I think this is another just fantastic entry, in the Showa era, and I think it deserves all the love that a Godzilla fan can give. Um, but let's go ahead and just talk about this. So, Ebirah Horror of the Deep, in short, it's this classic Godzilla monster mash with a very unique flavor, I think, and because it's this movie that kind of firmly plants itself in that monster island adventure subgenre that the Showa era did so well. Um, and it's not just about like city destruction, but it's about these like shipwrecked survivors, this mysterious island, very like evil like organization, and of course there's this giant crustacean monster who is battling Godzilla, and it's a film that really kind of embraces its fantastical elements and just delivers this really thrilling and this fun, just very surprisingly engaging story. It's different from many other Godzilla films. And with this one, we do have a little bit of a change as far as directing goes. So the director for this one's name is Jun Fukuda, um, and while he might not be as kind of widely celebrated as some of the other Godzilla directors like Ashiro Honda, Fukuda he helmed several other fantastic entries in the franchise. Including Godzilla versus Gigan, Godzilla versus Megalon, and Son of Godzilla. And that's one we'll be talking about right after this one. So Son of Godzilla, he also directed. Um, and he kind of had a knack for like action and adventure, and I think it really shines through in this movie. And Fukuda, he understands how to kind of balance that monster mayhem with the human drama, and he really injects this kind of healthy dose of fun into all this as well. um so and he also kind of keeps this kind of pace brisk, this pace is very brisk, and just this action, kind of exciting, and you know, just really making for a very entertaining watch. So let's go ahead and get into the story of this movie. So, the story kicks off with this character, this really young, um, I believe their name was Ryota, which is searching for his missing brother, Yada, who has disappeared at sea. So, all frustrated and desperate, he decides to kind of just stow away uh, on this yacht race, which is hoping to kind of find a lead. And however, this storm starts to blow, the yacht off, of course, and along with Ryota, we have this kind of ragtag group of these characters, a Chiro, which I think was kind of a nod to Ashiro Honda. Um, but Achiro is this kind of bumbling but well-meaning young man, and then Yoshimura, who's this kind of older, more cynical businessman. And then Goro, who is this very resourceful, very and kind of cynical, criminal who is fleeing from the police after this bank robbery. Yeah, for real. So these kind of unlikely companions, they find themselves, shipwrecked on this island, and they're they're uh, you know they're just kind of figuring out what they're going to do. So things kind of start to get weird a little bit, and they discover this red bamboo, which is this organization. No, it's not. It's not actually bamboo. It's just this kind of it's like a terrorist organization or something, I guess, who are using this island just as a secret base. And so the red bamboo they're enslaving like this native infant island. Um, and if you guys know what Infant Island is, that's the home to Mothra, right? So um, they're enslaving this kind of this infant island, the people that live there and stuff, and kind of force them to process this very strange, yellow liquid from this plant. And this liquid, as it turns out, is a repellent to this massive lobster monster, Ebirah, who patrols the waters and kind of around the island, just preventing anyone from escaping. Um, and Ebirah is a very unique kaiju. Um, he's not like this rampaging like force of nature like Godzilla or anything. He's more of this kind of territorial like guard dog almost. But he's just this colossal snapping clawing monster, and um he's very protective of this plant and the red bamboo's operations. So uh the human characters here, they quickly kind of realize that they're in this dangerous situation, and they're caught between this kind of oppressive regime that the red bamboo has, and also this monster guardian of the sea. Um, so in this kind of stroke of luck, I guess, or destiny, whichever way you want to look at it, um, the survivors end up stumbling upon a cave where Godzilla is sleeping. So years ago, Godzilla was injured in a fight with the military, and he retreated into this cave to heal. And now he's dormant, but these native islanders believe that he can be awakened to help them against the red bamboo and Ebirah. So at this part, cue that whole classic Showa era, resourcefulness. The humans, with the help of the Islanders, they hatch this plan to awaken Godzilla just using electricity. So essentially, they build this giant lightning rod, and just kind of harness this thunderstorm. You know what I mean? To shock to shock Godzilla and get him awake. And it's so over the top and just it really perfectly, I think, in tune with that whole spirit of the Showa era. Um, so Godzilla, he's grumpy now. He's kind of pissed off that he's been woke up, and he's kind of naturally territorial at this point initially as well. And so he immediately starts fighting with Ebirah, and we get really this really awesome, monster brawl between Ebirah and Godzilla. And Ebirah's like snapping his giant claws, and Godzilla, was like shooting that atomic breath that he always does. Um, and I think this fight was kind of really, really like well choreographed. Um, and because it really showcases like both of these monsters' kind of unique fighting styles early on in the film. And it's not really just a random monster fight or anything. It's just because it tells the story of how this fight is fueled by these islanders' desire for freedom, and just these humans' need to escape. Um, so the terrorist organization, the Red Bamboo, they're not going to let their operations be disturbed, of course. Um, so they unleash what is like their secret weapon, I guess, which is this giant condor. Um, and it comes and attacks Godzilla and Ebirah, and this leads to this kind of I don't know, it's almost like a Royal Rumble or something, So we have Godzilla battling Ebirah in the water and on land, and while also swatting down like these red bamboo like airplanes, like they're insects or something, and it's just really it's pure chaos in the best possible way. Um, so anyway, meanwhile, the humans and the islanders are all busy kind of sabotaging, the red bamboo base, and setting it on fire, and freeing all the enslaved people. And so they try to make this escape on this raft, just as Godzilla is destroying the base with his atomic breath, and kind of in this act of almost like sympathy for the giant monster, you know. It sets the island ablaze to destroy the yellow liquid plant, removing Abira's reason to be aggressive. So very interesting that they went in that direction. But the survivors, they're eventually rescued by Yada, which is Ryota's brother, who had been searching for him all along. So they were really they were searching for each other. And it's a very happy ending. It's an explosive ending for everyone except the Red Bamboo and Ebirah, who while defeated isn't actually killed. So it's a very nice touch. I think they try to take Ebirah and just kind of they turn him face at the end. If I'm talking about it in wrestling terms, which I do, I think that's, I mentioned this last night, but I think this is one of the reasons why I love the Godzilla franchise so much, and that's because a lot of this is like wrestling. And I know that's a really weird take, but it's just, but there's so many face and heel turns from these monsters uh, in throughout the franchise. It's just, I mean, I can't help but to look at it like wrestling. But wrestling is my favorite thing in the world, so I'm gonna like compare everything to to wrestling probably. Um, but anyway, this movie, A Bureau Horror of the Deep, I think it's more than just this fun creature feature. It I think it really holds a very unique place in the Godzilla franchise, and for several reasons. Um, because it shifts the focus from pure city destruction to this kind of more adventure oriented plot with these elements of like spy thrillers and island survival stories, and I think this is what really makes it stand out from many other Godzilla films. And also, I'll tell you another thing that really stood out to me is when Godzilla is fighting the giant condor in this. Like, it has some really interesting musical choices that's over that scene. It sounds like this kind of 1960s, like, surf music that you would hear in maybe like, you know, um, Hawaii Five-O or something. It's really like very different. It's something that was kind of out of the usual for like the music that's played in Godzilla movies. But I think that just kind of added to the whole charm of these movies, like, and the whole wackiness that we've come to expect with this franchise, especially at this time in this time period of Godzilla films. Not so much like later in the series, but like in this whole Showa era. I mean, and this is why I'm covering all of these films from the Showa era, because to me, as a Godzilla fan, this is the greatest era of Godzilla films, and I think it's really because of everything that was showcased in this era is why the franchise became as big and is as popular as it is today. Um, and just to kind of touch also more upon, like, this unique monster matchup between Ebirah and Godzilla. Ebirah I think is a very memorable kaiju. Even and he's not. I don't think he's talked about enough amongst Godzilla fans because he's he's very visually distinct and this has this really unique crustacean design, which is a refreshing change, if you ask me, from like the usual dinosaurs and the reptile monsters. Um, and he's not just a monster, to be defeated. He kind of serves this purpose, within the story, guarding this evil, like terrorist organization's operations. Um, and and while the monsters are the stars of this movie, the and I have to give the human characters a lot of credit within this film, because their detail in this film are surprisingly engaging. I think their motivations are kind of very quirky, and just their all their like resourcefulness in this is in this kind of face of these like overwhelming odds. It just kind of makes them more than just these kind of cardboard cutout characters waiting for the monsters to stomp on them. Just there's this whole theme of like oppression and freedom and teamwork. It's all kind of woven into this whole human story within the movie, and I think it really gives the film a little bit more depth than it might actually seem. Um, but the monster Ebirah, just perfectly embodies that whole spirit of the Showa era Godzilla films. It's a very um, imaginative monster design, and just there's all these like really exciting action sequences between the monsters, and just it's very campy as well. I mean, these movies are always very campy, but I mean, again, that's just a part of the charm. Um, and I just think that whole sense of fun is very infectious and is very, you know, um, that's why so many people like latched onto these movies so quickly during that time. Um, and again, like it doesn't take itself too seriously. It kind of just embraces all that absurdity and that very fantastical nature, and that's a big reason why I love it all. Um, but as I mentioned before, this movie doesn't get talked about enough amongst Godzilla fans, and there's a lot of Godzilla fans that might consider this movie to be a lesser Godzilla film because it's not as grand or dramatic as some of the others. But I think it's very underrated. Um, I think it's very entertaining. It's very fast paced, very creative, and just I think it showcases some of the best of that whole Showa era. It's got monsters and just that are battling, and these humans working together, and just explosions. I mean, a giant fucking lobster monster. I mean what could you not like about that? You know what I mean? And what more could a Godzilla fan ask for? But anyway, if you're looking for a fun, action packed Godzilla adventure with a unique monster and just a very satisfying story, at least in my opinion, just check this one out for sure. Ebirah, Horror of the Deep. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I mean, because it just really ties in perfectly with all these other Godzilla films that have been coming out at the time. Um, so I guess with that, I will move on to the next film, which was also directed by the same guy here, and this is Son of Godzilla from 1967. So this one gets kind of a mixed reaction in in the whole fandom of Godzilla. But for me, I this is another one I love. I mean, you're not going to hear me say a bad thing about this movie or really any of these movies from the Showa era. I mean, I may like some better than others, but all of these movies I absolutely love, and they're super. They're all super fun to me, especially this one. And I knew when I got to this, I'm like, well, I know a lot of people probably not going to agree with me in the Godzilla fandom when it comes to this one, but I have an absolute blast with this movie. Um, so if you're on the fence, or really haven't given this one a proper shot, I'm here. Listen up. I'm here to tell you why this movie deserves a place of honor in any Godzilla fans, ranking system. So first off, what is Son of Godzilla? So I think this is just a very delightful entry. I love the ending to this movie. And we'll get to that. But this was released right in the thick of the franchise's more uh I guess whimsical period. We'll call it that. So it's not the dark, brooding Godzilla of the original, film or this kind of modern monster verse that we have nowadays. Um, Instead, it's just this film that kind of embraces a more playful, adventure-oriented tone, and it focuses on this group of scientists who are encountering Godzilla and yes, his son. So think of this as kind of a kaiju sized adventure comedy with just a lot of heart. I mean, I love this movie. So again, like I said, like the last film, behind the camera again here is and directing it is Jun Fukuda. Um, and like I said, he worked on the last film of Ebirah Horror of the Deep, and then he would go on after this film and do a couple other Godzilla films. And he just, he brings that very light, energetic touch to this movie. I think he perfectly captures, the film's like adventurous spirit and just that really quirky humor. And he's not trying to reinvent the wheel here or anything, guys, but he really delivers this very solid, entertaining monster movie to me, at least, and I think it's very fun to watch. Um, so let's go ahead and jump into this story, and trust me, it's very wonderfully bizarre in the best possible way. So, Son of Godzilla, it throws us into this island in the South Seas where this team of scientists, is conducting these weather experiments, and their goal is to try and create this climate that's suitable for human, um, like human habitation, and to ensure this kind of stable food supply, and just, even in these really harsh conditions. So sounds noble, right? But well, things go kind of hilariously awry when this experiment, which is aimed at controlling the weather, it ends up backfiring on them. And instead of this kind of controlled temperature change, they accidentally supercharge the whole island's ecosystem. And this kind of surge in energy attracts the attention of these kamakuras, which are these giant praying mantis like monsters. And they start wreaking havoc across the island and just uh, eating all this scientist equipment and just uh, you know as giant praying mantises will do, of course. But as if these giant insects weren't enough, this whole weather experiment also awakens this nest of these giant spider eggs. So out pops Kumunga, which is this huge spider monster that's immediately hungry and will just plain terrifying in its own way. Um, but wait, there's more. So the chaos doesn't end there. The it also this whole energy surge on the island triggers this emergence of baby Godzilla. And now this isn't any baby Godzilla. This is Manila, who is a smaller, somewhat, let's say, a very unique looking. If you've seen thumbnail for this video, then that's him. He's very unique looking. He's just very clumsy. He's got this kind of a almost like puppy dog eyes, and his roar sounds more like a squeaky toy or something. And initially he's trapped in this giant egg, and the Kamakuras are relentlessly just attacking him, and just kind of seeing him, I guess, as a snack or something. Um, but then enter Godzilla himself, the man himself. And yeah, check that out. I forgot to show that to you guys. My Godzilla shirt I got on tonight, the burning Godzilla. But yeah, enter Godzilla, and Papa Godzilla, arrives in this kind of heroic fashion, just blasting the Kamakuras with his atomic breath and rescuing his son from those Kamakuras attacking him. But from there, the movie becomes this very, like very delightful mix of like monster battles and these scientists like and their weird antics and just really a very surprisingly heartwarming father son moments between Godzilla and Manila. And I think that's I used to not be as crazy about this, but it's so weird how things change when you become a parent. Because once I had my son, I started looking at like father son relationships in movies so differently. And this one is no different from any of those other films because the the Godzilla father son relationship he has with the baby Godzilla here is just it's so interesting to me, and I think that's what is really brought in a weird way has brought me to love this movie so much over the past several years. Um, but anyway, so we see Godzilla, trying to teach Manila how to roar properly, and it's just very adorable yet awkward, as you would imagine. And he's also trying to teach him how to breathe his atomic fire, but he's shooting out like these like smoke rings is all he can do, and he's just trying to teach him to just generally survive in this world that is filled with giant monsters and all these very confused humans. Um, so the scientists, meanwhile, they're trying to fix their weather experiment, and deal with this kind of ongoing, monster mayhem, and just really just trying to figure out a way to repel all these giant creatures. Um, so the film ends up culminating in this kind of fantastic three-way showdown between Godzilla, Manila, and Kumonga, the giant spider. So Manila initially is scared and very unsure of himself, and just he ends up finding this courage and even manages to contribute to the fight. And he unleashes this atomic breath of his own, which I mean, very wobbly. It's not as effective as his dad's atomic breath, but he eventually does to use it to try to contribute to the fight. And it's really just a very like triumphant moment, I think, for this character of Manila, and just for anyone who kind of loves that good underdog story, and I do. You guys, I've talked about that a lot on here, especially during my March Madness week when I was talking about all the different basketball movies. I love a good underdog story for sure. Um, but in the end of all this, the scientists they end up successfully, reversing their weather experiment. It causes the island to become frozen though, and it kind of forces Godzilla and Manila into this hibernation. Uh, and just that shot as how the movie ends, how like the snow is coming down on the island, and Godzilla and the baby Godzilla Manila, they're kind of preparing for this hibernation as they embrace in this hug. Um, I love that. I think that's very like, um, I don't know. It gets me emotional every time when I watch it because it's just, especially like I said, since I've become a parent, just like it's really changed my like perception of films in a way. It's just like I can't even explain. But I even just recently I changed that image, like the whole shot of Godzilla and Manila like embracing in the snow as my cover photo on my Facebook. I mean, I love it that much. It's absolutely awesome. It's one of my favorite moments in the entire Godzilla franchise. Um, but as far as this whole overall, this movie is definitely a unique film. I think within the Godzilla franchise, and it's often cited as one of the more lighthearted and just even comedic entries, but which is a point for contention for some fans. I mean, who kind of prefer a darker, more serious tone. But for me, I think this is precisely what makes this movie so endearing and so appealing. Um, it's it's a movie that doesn't take itself too seriously, and especially when it embraces that kind of sheer fun of these giant monsters battling in these ridiculous scenarios. Um, but Son of Godzilla also introduces the character Manila, who is the baby Godzilla, and a lot of people shit on that character and the design of the character, and um, but I think honestly, he has become this very significant part of the whole Godzilla lore because he represents a very softer side of Godzilla, and just kind of his presence really brings this kind of different dynamic to the monster universe. So love him or hate him, I think Manila is undeniably memorable, and just adds a very that adds this layer of heartwarming goofiness, I guess, to the franchise, and that's definitely the kind of stuff that I love. Um, but furthermore, Son of Godzilla is this fantastic example of the Showa era's very creative monster designs, and with the Kamakuras and the Kumonga. Uh, just while they're perhaps not as iconic as some of Godzilla's other um, rivals in the franchise, I think they're still wonderfully inventive and very creepy in their own way. Just and the film really showcases that very inventive spirit and the practical effects that are really that define this era of these Japanese monster movies. Um, but I guess in conclusion, this film is a gem to me in the Godzilla franchise. It's not about deep philosophical themes or earth shattering destruction or anything. It's just about these giant monsters who, especially Godzilla, that has a softer side here, and shows that compassion for his child. And it's just got this goofy humor and just, yeah, that whole father son dynamic is really what gets me with this one. Um, it's very pure, I think, just and it's very just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, guys. I mean, and for a Godzilla fan like myself, I think that this movie is an absolute must watch. Um, so yeah, I mean, definitely if you don't agree with me here, I'm just saying, look at my point of view when it comes to this movie. Give it another chance because I think it's a great entry into the franchise. Um, but now, and I kind of teased this a little bit last night, guys, several times, because as I do love all of these movies, I do have a favorite in the franchise, and it is now time to talk about my favorite Godzilla film, and this is from 1968. And this is Destroy All Monsters. Okay, so Destroy All Monsters, you could just forget about all these fancy, CGI epics. Forget about your gritty reboots. Um, for me, and I think for many old school Godzilla fans, this movie is just an explosion of monster mayhem, and just I think it is the pinnacle of the Godzilla franchise. Um, and to me, I think this is the best Godzilla film. But again, I may just be biased because it is my favorite. But yeah, I mean, from that whole moment that the iconic Toho fanfare blast, and we see that futuristic control center at Monsterland, um, I'm just I'm instantly every time I watch this, I'm instantly transported back to my childhood, and watching this as it come on TV, and I just remember being glued to the TV in awe and just in wonder of this film. Um, and this is one they showed a lot back in my childhood on TV for sure. So as many times, all the times I would watch it over and over again, I just my love would grow for it more and more. And this movie is just a whole kaiju party of of epic proportions, in my opinion. It's just it's a celebration of everything we love about these giant city smashing behemoths. Um, so what is Destroy All Monsters? Well, it's just I think it's the culmination of all the Showa era Godzilla films and this kind of over the top rally where nearly every classic Toho kaiju, um, you know, they they come together for this kind of unforgettable adventure. I think, just if you're a Marvel fan, imagine the Avengers, assembling, but instead of superheroes, it's Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, Anguirus, King Ghidorah, and a bunch of other monsters as well, including this. So for a kid, when I was a kid, and even now as an adult, that whole sheer scale of like monster goodness was just has always been mind blowing to me. Um, and the mastermind behind this whole glorious film, well, I've talked about him a lot already, and he's back again. The legendary Ashiro Honda. And Honda at this point, was a seasoned veteran when it came to the Godzilla franchise, and it definitely shows in this one as he has come back to what I think is his greatest, Godzilla film for sure. And because in this film he juggles kind of this massive cast of these monsters, and then he balances that with like action with this kind of and this surprisingly kind of engaging human story as well. And just really he just delivers this film that is so fucking fun, dude. um but anyway, so the movie starts off and it takes place in kind of a well, at the time, when this movie, because this was 1968 when the movie came out, so it was kind of seen as a far off future back then, but now this is be considered the past for us. So the movie starts off in the year 1999, and humanity has kind of achieved this very remarkable feat, is where they've rounded up all these Earth's monsters, and confined them all to this little remote island that they're calling Monsterland. So, and then I think in some versions they call it Monster Island, but yeah, I'm gonna be calling it Monster Land. And think of it as kind of a giant, like fenced in zoo for these kaiju, where they're just roaming freely under this kind of constant scientific observation. And life is peaceful for all these monsters for about 5 minutes, but suddenly things go haywire. Um, so all the communication with Monsterland gets lost, and simultaneously, all these monsters around the world, previously contained in these various research facilities, end up showing up in these different major cities around the world. So Rodan soars over Moscow and leveling out these buildings with these sonic booms, and Mothra shows up in Beijing and starts attacking, Beijing, China, um, and Godzilla emerges from I think is in New York City is where Godzilla goes, and then Manda, who's the sea serpent, attacks I think London or was it Paris? I can't remember. I always forget because um, and then Gorosaurus. No, it was Gorosaurus, which is the kind of normal, almost looks like a T Rex. Uh, he's the one that wreaks havoc in Paris. Yeah, it was Manda who had attacked London. Um, but and oh yeah, and even Anguirus, who's usually a friend to Godzilla, or not Godzilla, but he to to Gorosaurus, he kind of joins the destructive spree as well to all this. But so this panic kind of ensues, and the world is in chaos, and the military is just kind of helpless when it comes to this against this kind of coordinated monster onslaught all around the world. So the United Nations has this like council which is led by this Dr. Yoshida, and they're desperately trying to figure out what's going on. And so this they have this special investigation team, which includes this pilot and the scientist. The scientist named Dr. Sakamoto is they're kind of sent out to Monsterland to try to figure out what's really going on. So, upon the getting to the island and everything, they discovered that Monsterland is eerily deserted now of this human staff that was controlling the whole experiment. So, and they soon realized that these alien invaders named the Kelax are behind this global monster attack, and they're technologically advanced, but they're very ruthless and beings who have kind of infiltrated this monster land, and they use their mind control technology to seize control of all the monsters, which is essentially turning them into these weapons of like mass destruction. Um, but the Kelax, they demand Earth to surrender, and they're threatened to just unleash this kind of full power of their monster army, and um, if the humans refuse to surrender. So the heroes here, which are about to kind of they're not going to let that happen, So they kind of managed to discover the Kelax secret base, which is hidden beneath Monsterland's surface. And after kind of this like very daring infiltration by them, and this kind of a lot of classic sci-fi hijinks, including this this chase scene in these lunar rovers on the moon, which is super fun to me. They managed to destroy the Kelax and destroy the mind control device. Um, so with that alien influence broken now, the monsters kind of revert back to their natural instincts, which thankfully include defending Earth. so they like I said, using that wrestling analogy like I spoke of earlier, they turned heel for a minute, but now they're turning back face. So everything's all good now, and now instead of destroying cities for the Kelax, they're ready to destroy the Kelax themselves. So this leads to this kind of legendary ending, I think, at Mount Fuji, where pretty much every monster from the Showa era, Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, Anguirus, Gorosaurus, Manila's there again, the son of Godzilla, um, Manda, Baragon, and then even Varan, which we don't really see him till the very end of the movie. But they have united all against King Ghidorah, who's the three-headed space dragon, who the Kelax deploy as their ultimate weapon. And what follows I think is just pure fucking kaiju brawl heaven. It's just a glorious monster free for all. I mean, you got the atomic breath blast, the sonic booms, the poisonous webbing, and just it's good old fashioned monster wrestling. Um, and King Ghidorah, puts up a formidable fight, but that combined effort from all these the Earth's monsters is just simply too much for him. And they just kind of dismantle this space dragon, and ultimately leaving him defeated and kind of smoldering. Um, so with King Ghidorah, vanquished and now the Kilax defeated as well, all pieces restored back on Earth, and the monsters who are now free from that alien control, they return to Monsterland, and presumably to live out their days, in this kind of relative tranquility, which is until the next movie, of course. Um, but that's an interesting one too, and we'll get to that here in just a little bit. But in the end, here, humanity has kind of learned this valuable lesson, about the power of nature and just the dangers of an alien invasion, and we the audience too, are just kind of left breathless, with and grinning from kind of ear to ear with this. And I know I always am. Every time I watch this, I have such a fun time watching, and because it's really the ultimate Showa era monster movie, and it brought together almost every monster that Toho had created up until that point, except for a few like Ebirah and well, that's really the only one I can think of. If that I can, I mean, there might be a couple others, but I just can't think of them at this point. But it's just it's a true celebration, I think, of the franchise, and just and feels like a grand finale for that era. But of course, we know different. This wasn't the grand finale of that era, because there's so much more to come here, guys. Because at this point, this we were about 9 movies into the franchise and into this era, and a lot of people thought this was going to be the grand finale, but we still have 6 more movies just from the Showa era just to talk about. Um, but just to finish up talking about Destroy All Monsters, because because I tend to go a little bit extensively on this one since it is my favorite. I just wanted to talk about that. It further popularized that whole monster team up concept. And of course it wasn't the first film to feature these multiple monsters or the monster team ups. I think Destroy All Monsters truly perfected that art of the monster mashup, just because where there were so many that was involved, and I think it really paved the way for future films, and just even influencing that, like later franchises other than the Godzilla franchise. And if you think about the more modern MonsterVerse films, with the new Godzilla and the King Kong movies, I think that they really owe a huge debt to these films of the Showa era, because they really pioneered in all of that. Um, but I want to talk particularly about the final battle at Mount Fuji. So I think it's very extremely legendary. Just I think it's instantly recognizable for a lot of Godzilla fans, because it's been referenced, it's been parodied, and homaged like countless times, and I think remains one of the most iconic scenes in kaiju cinema history. Um, and this movie, it has its serious moments, but Destroy All Monsters is ultimately a film that was meant to be, really enjoyed and have a lot of fun with. It's because it's very thrilling, it's exciting, and it's just, I mean, it's just wonderfully like filmed. I mean, everything that's shot in the film just looks fantastic. And it's a really good popcorn movie to watch, I think. If you're looking just to sit down, relax, have a good time, this is definitely one I think for a lot of people that would enjoy in that aspect. And for me, it's the perfect Godzilla movie. Um, I mean, it embodies everything that I love about this franchise. The giant monsters, the over the top action, the just even the human characters in this are very compelling. The story with them is very interesting. Um, and just that whole blend of like sci-fi and the monster mayhem and just that it gives you that really that wonderful sense of like childlike wonder to this day. I think and it's a film that I can watch again and again and just still be completely captivated every single time. So if you're a Godzilla fan and you haven't seen Destroy All Monsters, buddy, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you're really doing yourself a disservice by not watching this movie if you're a Godzilla fan. So go watch it now. I mean, just end this video right now. Go watch Destroy All Monsters. If you're a Godzilla fan, you need to and you've not watched it, you need to change that ASAP. So, and I'm just telling you, prepare to be amazed, prepare to be thrilled, and just prepare to witness this ultimate kaiju spectacle. I mean, trust me, you will not be disappointed with this film. Um, so it's the king of all the Godzilla films to me, and it'll always hold that special place in my monster loving heart. But but guys, I guess that brings me to the last film that I'm going to be talking about for the night. Um, and this is another one that I think a lot of Godzilla fans are on the fence about. But honestly, this is another one of my favorite Godzilla films. And this is All Monsters Attack from 1969. So, this movie is also known, I believe, in the US as Godzilla's Revenge. But let's go ahead and just stick with the more descriptive original Japanese title in All Monsters Attack. Um, so for years, I think that this movie has really gotten a bad rap. I mean, um, it's often labeled by a lot of Godzilla fans as the worst Godzilla movie. Um, but I don't agree with that. Because I think this had such a really interesting take on the franchise because it's not your typical Godzilla film at all. Um, so I'm here to tell you that All Monsters Attack is not just good, but it's very unique and very charming, and just I personally think it's a very important entry, in the Godzilla franchise, and it just it's something that it's definitely fun in my eyes. It's and if you're looking for something that's a little bit different in the Godzilla franchise, you definitely want to check this one out. So, what is it exactly? So, simply put, it's a Godzilla film that's unlike any other in the classic Toho series. I know that for sure. Um, because while most Godzilla films are about this kind of large scale city destruction and these monster brawls that kind of impact all these different global events, and All Monsters Attack kind of takes a more personal and intimate approach. Um, and while I stated earlier about I'm not interested in these movies mostly for the human characters, it's going to be more for the monster characters. This one really focuses on the human characters, and especially one character in particular, and we'll get to that. But I think that's what makes this movie so unique and interesting because it also doesn't really exist in the normal universe of the Godzilla films. And I know that sounds confusing. If you've never seen this movie and the way I'm describing this, it sounds confusing, but we'll get there and I'll explain it a little bit better as we go on. But yeah, but like I said, it has this more intimate approach with it. It's just it's filmed is grounded in this world of this child named Ichiro, and which is because this is again directed by Ishiro Honda, so he kind of used his name similarly to this for this child main character. But with this child, the film uses the familiar Godzilla universe as more of a backdrop and more of like a dream world. And like this movie, All Monsters Attack, kind of exists in the real world that we live in, to where this kid is just a fan of these movies and the Godzilla the characters. So like I said, it uses the whole Godzilla universe as just as more of a like a backdrop to like a dream world. And this movie explores all these themes of like bullies and just being lonely and just and gaining courage. And it honestly, there's it's kind of like a kaiju infused Home Alone, but but it and also there's kind of like a Goonies aspect to it too. But like I said, we'll get into all that. Um, but as I stated already, this movie was again directed by the legendary director Ashiro Honda, um, and he's a master of just blending that spectacle with social commentary, and he brings this kind of signature touch to this movie, and even within it being like a smaller scale. And I think he understands like that core, appeal of Godzilla. And it isn't just destruction. It's this sense of wonder, this that sheer impact of these kind of colossal beings on our world. And he just kind of translates that, beautifully through this child's imagination. Um, Now let's go ahead and just dive deep into this story because it's a lot to unpack. But and I think understanding of what's going on, understanding the story is very crucial to appreciating this movie. And so I'm going to try to achieve that and try to convince all you naysayers of this film that this absolutely is a wonderful film. So in the beginning, we are introduced to Ichiro, who is this young boy that's living in uh, this area called Kawasaki, which is near this kind of industrial like canal district, I guess. So his parents, are always at work pretty much, leaving him home alone most days. And, Ichiro, who he's feeling lonely, he's feeling bored, he ends up spending his days like, daydreaming and getting to these kind of minor scrapes with these bullies of this gang of these older kids, which are led by this kid named that Ichiro calls Gabara. So Ichiro, he kind of takes this fantastical turn when during his daydreams he's transported to Monster Island, which is that this land that was talked about in Destroy All Monsters, where Godzilla and the other Toho monsters are roaming free. Um, so on Monster Island, Ichiro he ends up befriending Manila, Godzilla's son, and Manila, let's be honest, is not the most fearsome kaiju. He's a bit clumsy and prone to kind of whining, but uh, I think Manila is undeniably cute and relatable, especially with the story of this that this movie tells. Especially and he's relatable, for a lot of younger viewers, for kids that are watching this. And Ichiro, he kind of observes, Manila being frequently bullied by this monster, um, which also Ichiro calls Gabara, like his own real life bully. So it's a very truly bizarre and like nightmarish creature with these like frog like features and these electrical powers. And like I said, he's named after the very gang leader who torments Ichiro in the real world. Um, so through like these like dreamlike adventures that he has with Manila, and Manila does talk in this one. He actually, so he talks with Ichiro in these dreams, and you know, Ichiro, he starts to witness firsthand like Manila's struggles and how Godzilla, coaches his son to stand up for himself, and all these these Monster Island sequences are like archive footage that they're used from previous Godzilla. There's scenes in here from Ebirah Horror of the Deep. There's scenes in here from Son of Godzilla, and so forth. So we see Godzilla battling the Kamakuras and Kumonga, much like it's the same footage from the previous films, and it just but it engages us in this story as if Chiro is present there as well, and like I said, these aren't just like random monster fights. They're these kind of almost like life lessons for a Chiro, kind of to showcase courage and resilience and just that importance, of facing your fears and just, you know, um, even when facing something kind of seemingly much bigger and stronger than yourself. So, yeah, there's a bigger message with this one, and I think that's why I like this one so much because. Um, I'll be honest with you guys. I dealt with a lot of that bullshit when I was a kid and in school with bullying and stuff. So to see something that like I think that's one of the reasons why this movie is so important to me, is because it was very relatable to me as a kid, and because I love these movies since I was a kid. I just I kind of connected with that aspect of the film. But anyway, getting back to the story, back in the real world, Chiro, when he's not daydreaming, a lot of the things take place in his actual world where he kind of gets entangled with these pair of bank robbers, which that's another subplot to the story about this, these bank robbers, and they've hidden this kind of stolen money in this abandoned factory, and they end up capturing Achiro, but um, he's kind of emboldened now by this bravery that he's witnessed in his dreams from Godzilla and Manila, and just he ends up cleverly like outsmarting these robbers and escapes, and even using his like wits to help the police apprehend him, and and then he ends up managing to even stand up to Gabara's gang in this kind of final confrontation, proving he's found this inner strength within him now. And the movie, I think it cleverly blurs the lines between, Ichiro's dreams and reality. And are the monsters real? Perhaps in Ichiro's imagination, they are very real. And I think that's what truly matters. But just, yeah, that's the way I've always seen it, is that, like, that this kid was a fan of the Godzilla films, and he was going through these real life personal struggles, but his escape was in his dreams, where he saw these creatures that he looked up to in these movies, and it helped him build like courage and the ability to stand up to his real life bullies. And I just think that's that's an extremely like deep and powerful message for a Godzilla film. um but yeah, I think the film ends with Ichiro, who's no longer afraid, and just kind of having this found confidence and this renewed sense of like self worth, um, which is directly inspired by just his imagination, that connection to Godzilla and his son. Um, but let's go ahead and just talk about the legacy of this movie, and like I said, a lot of I've tried my best to try to convince you guys that don't really care for this movie, that why it is important and why it is so special to the Godzilla franchise. But let's go a little further with it. So, like I said, this movie is cited by a lot of fans as the worst Godzilla film. And yes, it is very undeniably very different. It's got a lower budget. Reuses a lot of stock footage from the previous Godzilla films. And the monster action, and while it's fun, is more geared towards this younger audience. However, dismissing it, I think dismissing it outright it is as a huge, mistake. Because this movie is important because it really it dared to be different, and it was, like I said, aimed at a younger demographic, and introducing the kind of a new generation to Godzilla through this eyes of this child main character. Um, and I think it's a film about empowerment. It's about finding that courage within yourself, and just even when you feel small and insignificant. I think these themes of like the bullies, and just overcoming that fear, really resonates deeply, and just that whole imaginative, like Monster Island, and those dream sequences are just a lot of something that a lot of kids did when I know when I was a kid, I was always like having these kind of daydreams about just different things, from movies to wrestling to just all kinds of stuff, and I just think, like, by putting that in this film is very kind of that pure childhood, fantasy brought to life with this this classic Toho monster stuff, involved. But anyway, this film, I think is just, to me, it's very endearingly quirky and creative. And just Gabara, the monster Gabara is a truly unique and kind of unsettling monster design, which is, something genuinely kind of original in the Godzilla franchise. And then, Manila again, despite that kind of awkwardness that the character has, I just think is very lovable in this, and just the relationship again with Godzilla, um, not traditionally epic or whatever. It adds this layer of kind of like parental warmth to the Godzilla franchise, and I love that. Um, but all monsters attack, overall, and it might not be this grand scale monster epic in the kind of vein of Destroy All Monsters, or Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, or several others. It's a smaller, more personal story, uh, more of a Godzilla fairy tale, if you will. Um, but within within it all, I think it delivers this very heartwarming and just ultimately positive message, about courage and just and self belief, you know, and it's just all kind of wrapped in this kind of vibrant, imaginative world of Godzilla, and just, I mean, I just don't understand, guys. Like, how could you not? How could, as a Godzilla fan, and especially, those that were kids when we became Godzilla fans, like, how could you not fucking love this movie? So, to all you Godzilla fans out there, I urge you to give All Monsters Attack another look. I mean, especially if you haven't seen it in a while, um, or only you dismissed it based on like negative word of mouth. If you've never seen it, but you just based on everything you've heard about it, you don't want to watch it. Don't be that way, guys. Don't be that guy. Just give this movie a chance, for real. I mean, just approach it with an open mind. Kind of understand its intentions. You might just find yourself enjoying this movie, because I think it's very underrated. I think it's extremely overlooked. It's a Godzilla film that proves that, even the king of the monsters can inspire courage in the smallest of us. And so, long live Godzilla, and long live that wonderfully weird movie that is All Monsters Attack. Um, but yeah, guys, that is it for the movies for tonight. Um, Now, what I'm going to do before I go, I'm going to go ahead and show off a few more items from my Godzilla collection. So, I forgot to show this to you guys last night, when I was talking about all the films I went over last night. but I showed you guys several different items on the stream last night from the 1954 original Godzilla film. Well, I had one other set out for some reason. I guess I just overlooked it. I forgot. But I'm gonna go ahead and show that to you now. So I'm a big like lunchbox guy. I love collecting old vintage lunchboxes, and while this is not vintage, it still is in like the look of it and everything looks like the old school lunchboxes. And I think who is the company that makes Surreal Entertainment? Is the one that puts these out, and I mean they're super affordable. I think I just paid like $25 a piece for these, and this is the Godzilla 1954 lunchbox, and I'll show you guys all the sides of it. Um, so there's that one side, and then the back part is just the same image as the front, and then there's the other side, and then on the bottom it just has like the company, like I said, Surreal Entertainment and everything. It's got a couple the Toho and Godzilla logos on the bottom there. Um, and then on the top is actually the oxygen destroyer um, mechanism that Serizawa created in the film to destroy Godzilla. Um, and inside there is a bonus, and I still have the plastic wrapping on this, guys. So, well, actually, I can take it out. So it's because it's not completely sealed. But this is the thermos that it comes with, and it has like the original Japanese poster image on there of Godzilla or Gojira, if you will. And then on the back is very cool, as it has this image of kind of like a uh, almost like an X-ray diagram of Godzilla with all this different Japanese writing, which I can't read, but it looks cool as fuck. So I mean, that's all that matters. But yeah, I meant to show that last night, and I completely forgot. But but yeah, that's one thing from the collection for tonight. Um, and up next is actually another lunchbox as it pertains to the films that I talked about tonight. And this one is, of course, from my favorite Godzilla film of all time, Destroy All Monsters. So here is that lunchbox. And you see, you got Godzilla on there, you got Manila down below him, and Anguirus right below him as well, and Gorosaurus, and and King Ghidorah, and just they're all there. They're all represented there, and just a couple on the sides where there's Gorosaurus erupting from when he was erupting in Paris, I believe, towards the beginning of the film, and then on the other side we got Godzilla as he was arriving in New York City, and then on the top is the ship in the film as well. So yeah, I love this lunchbox, and it also does come with a thermos as well. And let me go ahead and pull that one out. So get out the plastic here. All right. So and then of course this one's the same like the other. It's got the classic Japanese poster of the film on the front, and on the back, just like the other, it's got King Ghidorah, um, the X-ray diagram of King Ghidorah, and such a cool design, guys. I mean, like King Ghidorah's got to be like the coolest design for a monster in the whole franchise. And he's definitely, he's not my favorite. Godzilla's, like I said last night, Godzilla is my absolute favorite. But as far as designs go, King Ghidorah is absolutely the best and the coolest. Um, Hey Brandon, what's going on, man? You said I don't think I've ever watched a single Godzilla movie, but after listening to your reviews, I have to check. Man, listen, you definitely need to. I think because me and you are very like-minded. We like a lot of the same stuff. I mean, there's some things here and there that we don't really agree on when it comes to stuff, but I don't know, man. Like I feel like I kind of did a disservice to you as my friend because we grew up together. You were always coming over to my house when we were kids, and I can't believe that I never showed a Godzilla movie to you while you were at my house. So I feel like that's partly my fault that you've never seen a Godzilla movie. But yeah, man, I think, I know you like a lot of the cheesy shit like that I do. So I definitely recommend you and with any of those Godzilla movies from like the 50s and the 60s, I mean, you can start wherever you want basically. I mean, cuz like I said earlier, they're not really extremely tied together. I mean, they are in a way, um but yeah, man, it's like especially with Destroy All Monsters, like that's my favorite Godzilla movie because it has like around like 8 or 9 different monsters that are all included, in the movie. So yeah, just yeah, check them out sometime, man. Let me know what you think about them for sure. Um, but the next thing I wanted to show guys is so I showed where's it at? I showed this last night, which is the NES game, the regular Nintendo Godzilla game, and I wanted to show this one too, as this one was released on my favorite gaming system of all time, the Super Nintendo, and this is Super Godzilla. If I can, there we go. So it's got Godzilla in the center there, and then like uh, two of the different heads from King Ghidorah surrounding him. Um, And like I spoke of the one from last night for the original Nintendo, it not being a very good game. This one's really not either. But I still had this one in my collection, and I used to have a huge Super Nintendo collection. I had close to 300 different games for Super Nintendo, but I sold about all those, and this was one of the only ones that I did keep because I wanted to keep it as a part of my Godzilla collection. And yeah, like I said, don't really recommend this game, but it's good to have, for if you have a Godzilla collection. Um, put that there for a second. The next thing I want to show. So I want to ask you guys, like, so I'll be 39 this year, and so anybody that's around that age, between like between 30 and 39. Do you guys remember a little magazine that was, for kids in the 90s called Disney Adventures? Um, well, I had a subscription to these, so I would get these, in the mail. My mom always had a subscription to them for me, and they always had really awesome stuff on the covers that would be featured in articles in the magazine, and they wouldn't always be Disney related. I mean, they had one that had like Power Rangers. They had like different like movies that were coming out like featured on the covers, and so I got one I want to show you here, and this was a Disney Adventures magazine that had Godzilla on the cover, and it says "Sneak Peek Godzilla Rules." Um, you guys see it? Sorry for my lighting. I apologize. But yeah, it says Godzilla Rules. And what this was a sneak peek at the 1998 American Godzilla film starring Matthew Broderick, um, which was a huge flop for me as a Godzilla fan. And I don't even really like talking about that movie. Because it's just not one I like. My wife loves it. I think she said she went to the theaters and watched it, and I did too. But I was just really let down by even I was like I'm around 12 years old when the movie came out, but I just was not crazy about it. I haven't watched it many years. I don't really plan to either, but yeah, I mean, and that's like just your kind of typical Godzilla design. It's on the cover. That's not what he looks like in that 1998 movie at all. So inside the magazine, let me see if we can. It has a few like it talks about the movie and it shows like a few different shots and stuff from the movie, and just kind of talks about to kind of get people built up to go watch the movie. Um, But and I think it even kind of has this interview in there with Matthew Broderick from the movie. And what's super cool about this, though, it also has this article in here showing stuff about Godzilla and how he stacks up against other monsters. And if you notice this mummy right here, that is the mummy from Monster Squad, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's my third favorite movie of all time, and that is so super cool that they used the mummy from Monster Squad for this article in Disney Adventures. Um, and it also has like this like monster tarantula up here as well, which kind of reminds you of Kumonga from the Godzilla films. And on the next page, it shows like the T Rex up here from Jurassic Park, and over here the creature from the Black Lagoon, and down here you got King Kong. Just very cool. I really I loved these magazines when I was a kid, and just so looking back in that and stuff is very nostalgic for me. Um, but the last thing I do want to show is something that's really cool. I didn't even know this existed until it was given to me as a gift for Christmas one year at my job. So um, we use this thing almost every year at at my job, to where it's kind of like a secret Santa thing, to where like we draw names and we have to we buy gifts for each other within a certain like price limit. And when we put our names into the drawing, we put our names along with this list of things that we like, things that we enjoy. And almost every year, I always put in Godzilla as part of my list. And of all the years we've done it, I've only gotten a Godzilla item as a gift one time, and it was and the girl that I'm friends with, that I work, her name's Vanessa, and so she got my name that year, and lo and behold, she got me this really cool Godzilla mug, and it's like, I guess it's like porcelain. I guess that's what you would call that material. But I mean, and I don't really use it for drinking because if you see the top part, the hole there it's kind of like very narrow, and it's also I tried it one time and it's very kind of hard to drink out of. So I just kind of use it for like Sharpies and pens and stuff as a cup holder thing. And but I thought that was very extremely thoughtful of her to get that for me. Um, that year for Christmas. And yeah, I keep it here in my office, and I see it daily. So yeah, thanks, Vanessa. I know you probably will never watch this, but if for some reason you do, I do appreciate you getting that for me that year for Christmas. Um, but I guess that is it for tonight, guys. Again, had a ton of fun, just like I did last night. Um, I mean, every time I talk about these Godzilla movies, whether it's on video or if it's just with a personal conversation I'm having with a friend, um, these movies just bring out the kid in me, and I think that's what's ultimately important, is that we find passions for things like for Godzilla or wrestling or whatever it is that you may like, things that we enjoy, we grew up loving, from a kid to an adult, um, and because that's really that brings as you get older, that brings a lot of joy out of you when you talk about these things or you think about these things, um, and I think that's just kind of the a guide to happiness, as an adult, because being an adult sucks sometimes. Just let's be honest. I mean, having to pay bills, having all these extreme responsibilities, it sucks to be an adult, guys. So don't. I think best advice I could give is just to never lose that childlike, passion that you have for something that keeps us sane in this world. And Godzilla is one of those things for me. Um, so anyway, like I said, I appreciate all of you guys for checking out this video. I just want to thank everyone who either watched this live and is here in the chat tonight, or if you're watching this on replay. Just I appreciate all of you guys more than you know, and just drop me a comment below on what your favorite of these five movies that I talked about tonight, or what your favorite moment is from these movies, or your favorite monster, or whatever you want to talk about. I'm open minded to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about as far as the Godzilla franchise goes. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button to catch more videos like this one, and just from for any that I put out in the future. And click that bell as well for kind of future notifications for upcoming videos, so that you don't want to miss. And I guess with all that said, guys, I'm Crater. This is CraterMania. I love you guys, and have a good night.